Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling someone who's just incredibly hard to pin down, a real master of, I guess, synthesizing different worlds.
Absolutely. He moves between punk rock clubs and big TV sound stages sometimes, like at the same time. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, exactly. So we've done a really deep dive into the life and career of Fred Armisen, one of modern comedy's most, well, prolific and adaptable creators, and maybe one of the most perpetually surprising ones, too.
Right. And the challenge with someone like Armisen, he's the ultimate creative polymath. You just can't define him by one thing.
No way.
So our goal for you today is to try and quickly but thoroughly pull together all these different sides of his career. You've got the serious punk drummer, the sketch comedy legend, the TV showrunner.
Uh-huh.
And try to figure out what really makes him tick.
Mm-hmm.
What makes him so unique? We're kind of looking for those aha moments, the things that tie his interests together, especially music and that really fascinating ancestry.
Okay, let's start with the basics. The quick snapshot. His birth name is Feridun Robert Armisen. Born December 4th, 1966, down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. His path seems set pretty early. He went to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, but then, and this is key, he dropped out. Why? To focus completely on rock drumming.
Yeah, that music part is crucial. He's been active since '84, and his core identity, it's this mix, isn't it? Comedian, actor, musician, writer, all of it.
And just a quick look at his recent work tells the story. Co-creator, co-star of Portlandia. That show basically defined a certain kind of satire for years.
Totally. And then documentary Now with Bill Hader and Seth Meyers, which is just incredibly niche and smart. Like, you need to know documentaries to get it.
Right. And it doesn't stop there. He also co-created, wrote, and produced Los Spookies for HBO, a Spanish-language horror comedy. It shows this real commitment to, well, different cultural stories.
Absolutely. And all this is built on that massive foundation, the 11 years at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and running alongside that, for 10 years, he was the band leader, the music director, often the drummer, for the 8G band on Late Night with Seth Meyers.
It's almost overwhelming when you list it all out. But when you dig into the source material, it's the origins, the roots, that give you the most kind of striking insights, especially about identity itself.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this early life.
Yeah.
Because the backstory here is, it's really something super layered, especially the family lineage part. So he moved to New York as a baby, grew up in Valley Stream, out on Long Island. And get this, he was high school classmates with Jim Brewer, another SNL guy.
Huh? Small world. Right. And the sources also mention he lived in Brazil for a bit when he was young, which just adds another layer, language, culture.
Definitely. And his parents, they immediately reflect this international blend. His mother, Hildegard Mirabal Level, she was a school teacher born in Venezuela, San Fernando de Apure.
Okay.
And his father, Feridun Herbert Armisen, worked for IBM, born in Soltau, Germany.
So right there, you got this mix. German structure, maybe, Venezuelan vibrancy. You can kind of see how that might feed into his characters, the ones who cross cultural lines, like Ferricito, that Venezuelan comedian character.
Oh, totally. But here's where the story takes a really sharp turn. A connection to, like, major world history. For most of his life, Fred Armisen thought his paternal grandfather, Ihara Masami, was Japanese.
Right. That was the name, the identity that was presented. But it was constructed. Adopted out of necessity, really.
Necessity, how so?
The truth, which came out through, genealogy and family research, is way more complex. His grandfather's birth name was Park Young-in. He was actually Korean, born in Ulsan.
Oh, okay.
And not just any Korean family. Park Young-in's family was part of the Korean aristocracy.
Yeah.
They traced the lineage back to the 1600s.
That's incredible. A huge historical reveal. So the big question is, why? Why would someone from the Korean aristocracy adopt a totally Japanese name and persona? Masami Kuni, was it?
Exactly, Masami Kuni. It was tied directly to this moment of just horrific geopolitical trauma. He adopted the Japanese name and identity after the massacre of Koreans in 1923.
Oh, wait. Context here.
Right, so 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake hits Japan. In the chaos right after, there was this intense wave of violence against Koreans living in Japan, fueled by, false rumors, deep-seated prejudice.
Yeah.
It was incredibly dangerous.
God, that's awful.
Yeah. So for Park Young-in, who was just a high school student then, survival, his ability to even get an education, it depended on adopting this new identity, the identity of the dominant culture, which at the time, Japan occupied Korea.
So as a teenager, he had to essentially perform the identity of his colonizers just to stay safe and go to school. That puts things in perspective.
It really does. And he maintained it. He studied aesthetics at Tokyo Imperial University, became a professional modern dancer. Then he moved to Germany. That's where Armisen's father was born later. After the war, he kept going with his art, formed a top modern dance company in Japan, eventually moved to the U.S. He even taught dance at Cal State Fullerton for over a decade, from 64 to 75.
So his grandfather wasn't just someone who changed his name. He was a professional artist, a dancer, who had to build and perform this entirely different identity across decades, continents, all stemming from this historical conflict.
Exactly. So when we talk about Fred Armisen's talent for characters, it's not just like a skill he picked up. It feels deeper. It's almost like a family history of adaptation, of necessary performance.
Yeah.
So if you put it all together, Venezuelan, German, and this hidden Korean aristocratic legacy involving identity shifting for survival, it's incredibly complex. It almost demands adaptability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the root of his skill, that ability to slip into different personas, sometimes conflicting ones, with this weird authenticity. It's not just comedy. For his family, it was life or death.
And even before he really understood all that family history or even found comedy, he knew what he wanted. Music. He saw The Clash, saw Devo on TV as a kid.
Right.
And that was it. He wanted to be a performer. And that led him straight to dropping out of art school to play drums. Music was the foundation.
Okay, so before he was like Nicholas Fenn stuttering through political commentary or Ian Rubbish singing about Thatcher, he was a serious punk drummer. Let's track this music career because it spans, 4 decades? And it runs completely parallel to the comedy.
Yeah.
Feels like it informs everything.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. You got to see his time in the punk scene, not just as like some youthful phase. It's foundational. It's where he got his timing, that sort of anarchic energy, his like encyclopedic knowledge of subcultures.
Right.
Started playing drums in high school, 84, then 88, big move, goes to Chicago specifically to drum for Trenchmouth.
And Trenchmouth wasn't just some garage band, right? They were part of that whole 90s Chicago post-hardcore math rock scene. They had records out, Construction of New Action, Trenchmouth versus the Light of the Sun. Exactly, they were serious.
So what does playing that kind of music teach you if you're going to become a sketch comic later?
It teaches rhythmic precision and controlled chaos. Math rock, post-hardcore. It's all about shifting time signatures, sudden stops, complex rhythm, syncopation. It's organized noise, basically. As the drummer, you can't be loose. You have to be incredibly precise. You're controlling the structure while pushing the energy. And that skill set, mastering complex, precise timing, that's exactly what makes his best comedy characters work.
That makes total sense. Like Nicholas Fenn, the humor is all about that impeccable rhythm, right? Disrupting the flow just so. You need a drummer's precision for that.
Totally. And while he was in that scene, he also did some other kind of surprising gigs that needed that physical control.
Yeah.
Like playing drums with the Blue Man Group in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, background drums. And later he actually toured with them in their How to Be a Megastar Live show. He played this deadpan salesman character advertising a rock manual. So he was already mixing the music and that specific absurdist humor.
And he kept playing, right? Guest drumming on other people's stuff.
Yeah, totally. Played on a Les Savvy Fab album in 2007, Let's Stay Friends. Played on a Matthew Sweet album, Modern Art, in 2011. He's genuinely just a lifelong music guy. He shows up in punk documentaries like Salad Days, The Damned, Don't You Wish That We Were Dead? He never left the scene, just added like 3 other careers.
Huh, right. Which leads us straight to that big, steady gig outside SNL. The band leader job.
Yeah, the Late Night with Seth Meyers gig, 10 years, starting February 2014, music director, frequent drummer for the AG Band. It was kind of the perfect fit, right? Musical skill, plus that quick improv ability.
That was such a great run, but it just ended recently.
Yeah, sadly. The AG Band, they were laid off end of the 2023-24 season. NBC budget cuts, apparently.
Oh, that's tough.
It is. But what's interesting is how Armisen just like immediately pivots back to pure music projects. It shows he never stopped seeing himself as a musician first.
And his projects are so Armisen. Like, he got a Grammy nomination for Best Comedy Album for Stand Up for Drummers.
Right. The title alone, Stand Up for Drummers. It's comedy for drummers, about being a drummer. So hyper niche. It's him loving a subculture with that intense, detailed focus.
It's the ultimate inside joke.
Totally. making comedy for the guys always stuck at the back.
And he got to play drums with Devo at John Waters Festival in 2018. That's like a perfect storm of his heroes.
Wow. And the upcoming project sounds maybe the most purely Armisen thing ever. An album of sound effects?
Yeah, September 2025, 100 sound effects on Drag City.
Okay.
It's just peak Armisen, an album that's all about abstract sound, performance art almost. He's got collaborators like Tim Heidecker, Ricky Lindholm on it. And significantly, he dedicated the album to Steve Albini.
Oh, wow. The legendary engineer. Yeah, who he worked with way back on a Chevelle EPK thing. It just shows how deep his connection is to the technical side, the sound design, the abstract bits of performance. He uses his comedy fame to push this really niche, obscure stuff. So, okay, this deep foundation in music, in precise performance, rooted in this family history of, like, shifting identities, it naturally leads to comedy. But what's interesting is he apparently saw TV as an indirect route at first.
Right. He was still playing with Trenchmouth when he started thinking about acting. Like, he'd do something performance-related, and maybe that would lead to TV eventually.
And that early stuff included those memorable Andy Kaufman-esque appearances on Conan?
Oh, yeah, those were weird. In a good way. Very awkward, meta, messing with the whole late-night format, like Kaufman.
Exactly. That, plus some voice work he was doing, Crank Anchors, Adult Swim stuff, that led straight to SNL. Featured player in 2002.
Got bumped up to the main cast in 2004, and then just stayed for 11 years. Left in 2013.
Which, at the time, made him the third longest tenured cast member ever, behind Seth Meyers and Daryl Hammond.
That's huge.
And maybe even more impressive, he was in the second highest number of sketches, 856 sketches.
856. Wow, that just screams versatility, right? They could plug him in anywhere, often multiple times a night.
Totally. He wasn't just one thing.
Okay, let's talk recurring characters, the fan favorites, because they often perfectly reflect everything we've been talking about. Heritage, music, absurdity, like Ferricito, the Venezuelan nightclub comic.
Yeah, Ferricito is a direct line to his mom's Venezuelan roots, right? It let him play with that rhythmic, physical, slightly absurd lounge comedy style. He's synthesizing his own background into this really specific persona.
Then you have the pure absurdists, characters where it's all about timing and structure, like Nicholas Fenn, the political guy who can't finish a sentence.
Oh, classic. That's pure rhythmic disruption. Controlled chaos. It goes right back to the drummer's precision. You're always waiting for the downbeat, and it never quite lands, you know.
Totally. And bringing it back to music, Ian Rubbish.
Ugh. Ian Rubbish, the late 70s British punk rocker, look, accent, everything, who shocks everyone by writing these super earnest songs supporting Margaret Thatcher.
The genius of that is just, it's so Armisen, takes his deep knowledge of punk, the super anti-establishment genre, and flips it. Makes the punk guy pro-establishment. It's parodying the intensity of punk, like Johnny Rotten, but twisting the message. You have to know punk to fully get the joke.
Exactly. It's meta. It requires that inside knowledge. And then speaking of music and improv, Garth. From Garth and Kat with Kristen Wiig on Weekend Update.
Oh my God, Garth and Kat, their whole thing was being completely unprepared, right?
Yeah.
Making up these totally nonsensical songs on the spot, but with total confidence.
Yeah, which needed not just quick wits, but like a musician's instant grasp of basic harmony and timing, even if it was used for total nonsense.
And we have to mention Stewart from the Californians. The soap opera parody with those ridiculously specific driving directions and the accents.
Huh, yeah. That sketch was all about hyper-local observation, nailing that very specific language, the mannerisms, shows his ear for cultural detail. His
celebrity impressions were great, too. He played Barack Obama for years, from season 33 to 38. Jay Farrow took over after. It was a solid impression. Maybe not flashy, but steady.
Right, but the music impressions.
Yeah.
That's where his inner fanboy really came out.
Like Prince. There's that great story, right? He created the Prince Show sketch with Maya Rudolph as Beyonce.
Yeah.
Specifically hoping it might get Prince's attention, maybe even lead to meeting him.
Exactly. That's pure dedication, using your massive platform as a way to try and connect with your idol. It shows how, for him, comedy is often the way into the subculture, not just making fun of it from outside.
He also said Steve Jobs was the one he liked doing most, popping up on Update in the black turtleneck to show off some weird new gadget.
But maybe one of the best and most fruitful impressions was Ira Glass.
Oh yeah, he nailed that cadence, the This American Life voice.
Yeah, he nailed it so well that Ira Glass himself saw an unaired sketch, was super impressed, and invited Armisen to co-host an actual episode of This American Life about doppelgangers.
No way.
Yeah. So again, the impression wasn't the end point. It opened a door to this cool collaboration. It's a pattern with him.
So Armisen doesn't just like fade away after SNL. He uses that momentum, those relationships, to build this whole other thing, this empire of really specific, collaborative, niche comedy, and wins 2 Peabodys doing it. One for SNL's political stuff, one for Portlandia.
Right. And Portlandia is probably the defining post-SNL series for him.
Yeah.
Co-created, co-starred with Carrie Brownstein from Sleater-Kinney, premiered in 2011, ran 8 seasons on IFC, became this total cultural touchstone.
It really did. It just perfectly captured and, yeah, satirized that specific kind of urban, maybe slightly pretentious, but also hyper-earnest culture.
Yeah.
You know, localism, weird hobbies.
Totally. And it worked because they were part of that world in a way. They observed it with real affection, even while they were making fun of it. Got him Emmy nominations, too, for writing and acting.
And the collaborations kept coming. Working with other SNL guys. Documentary Now with Bill Hader and Seth Meyers.
Which is brilliant. It's not just parody. It's like this deep love letter to documentaries.
Yeah.
They recreate the look, the feel, the style of famous docs like Grey Gardens or Jiro Dreams of Sushi with incredible accuracy.
You really have to respect the originals to do that show well.
Yeah.
Which fits Armisen's whole approach, right? Master the subculture, then gently poke fun at it. The detail in Documentary Now. Costumes, editing, pacing, it's intense. You need to know film history.
Definitely. And then there's the project that connects right back to his heritage. Los Spookies.
Ah, yes. 2019 to 2022. Co-created, starred in it, wrote, executive produced, Spanish language series about these friends who turn their love of horror into a business creating scares for people.
It's such a unique show. Surreal, funny, deadpan, a perfect Armisen blend.
And it feels like a really important step, too. You know, actively using his platform to make something outside the usual English language comedy box reflects his own multicultural background.
Absolutely. And we really have to talk about that partnership with Carrie Brownstein. It goes way back before Portlandia to their sketch duo Thunderant, making these little videos, often about, like, indie stuff, feminist bookstores.
Right. And their relationship, people always talk about how unique it is. Brownstein called it one of the most intimate, functional, romantic, but non-sexual relationships she's ever had.
Yeah, and Armisen said something similar about the intimacy being like no other, just without the physical side.
Yeah.
It points to this really deep, platonic, creative bond that seems to fuel their best work together. It seems like that's where he finds real stability, these intense working partnerships.
Beyond the shows he created, he pops up everywhere, voice acting.
Oh, yeah. He was Speedy Gonzales on the Looney Tunes show, did voices in the Smurf movies, Lego Ninjago, Mitchell's versus the Machines, the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
And live-action guest spots, too. Always memorable. Like Geraldo, one of Spanish Jackie's husbands in Our Flag Means Death. Fit right into that show's weird, funny, affectionate tone.
Perfect casting. And he was Uncle Fester in Wednesday. Totally unsettling. Great look. And just recently, the FDA guy, Mike Punce, in Seinfeld's Unfrosted.
Ah, right. He just slots into these wildly different universes, which again kind of reflects that adaptability we talked about.
And video games, too, which speaks to his fandoms. Voiced radio bits in Grand Theft Auto IV. And he was in both Red Dead Redemption games. A pharmacist in the first, a theater host in the second.
And apparently he's a huge fan of the Red Dead games themselves.
Right. See, it all connects. Music, niche comedy, specific fandoms, it all feeds the work. Whether he's parodying yacht rock or playing a character in a massive game, he's always deep inside some subculture, looking out. ###CS. Personal reflections and the question of persona. Okay, so to really try and understand an artist who's so good at impersonating and embodying other people, other characters, we kind of have to look at his own reflections of his personal life. And there's this, well, this challenging split, isn't there?
Yeah, between the incredibly successful, seemingly generous collaborator and the private self that seems more complicated.
Right. He's had several public relationships. Married to musician Sally Timms early on, 98 to 2004. Then married actress Elizabeth Moss, 2009 to 2011. Dated Abby Elliott from SNL for a bit. Dated Natasha Lyonne from 2014 to 2022. Lyonne said they split amicably, still love each other, still talk all the time. And then he married comedian Ricky Lindholm in late 2022.
But it's the reflections on the marriage to Elizabeth Moss that seem to really highlight that tension you mentioned.
Yeah. Moss described their time together as extremely traumatic, awful, and horrible, which is just such a stark contrast to how his creative partners talk about working with him.
And she had that quote, it's pretty brutal, but maybe insightful, about his character work.
Oh, right. One of the greatest things I heard someone say about him is he's so great at doing impersonations, but the greatest impersonation he does is that of a normal person.
Wow. Yeah. That hits hard. It suggests the guy who can flip between Ian Rubbish and Steve Jobs and a Californian homeowner maybe struggles most when he's just supposed to be himself, consistent, the normal person in her relationship.
It raises that fundamental question, doesn't it, about performance versus self. Is the ease with characters linked to a difficulty with just being?
It's tough to square those two images. The brilliant collaborator nailing every niche, and the person described as, well, struggling to perform normalcy. Did Armisen ever address that tension himself?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Later on in an interview, he seemed pretty self-aware, maybe even remorseful. He said something like, I think I was a terrible husband. I think I'm a terrible boyfriend. I feel bad for everyone I've gone out with.
Okay. So an acknowledgement, at least, that his interior self maybe doesn't line up with what partnership requires, reinforcing that idea that maybe stability for him is found in adopting those external personas.
It suggests that maybe the thing that makes him great, that ability to embody anyone, is somehow tied to the thing that makes personal life difficult, maintaining one single consistent self.
Maybe we can balance that heavy personal stuff with some of his other interests, where he does seem to find certainty.
Like he's openly atheist. That's a clear stance.
And back to music, he's a huge black metal and death metal fan, like deep cuts. He mentions bands like Immortal, Beherit, Liturgy, Death Heaven.
Right. Another layer of intense, niche, sometimes dark subculture that he fully embraces. And maybe those scenes, those genres, they offer their own kind of structure, rules, aesthetics, language he can master and inhabit. Maybe that provides a kind of comfort.
Interesting thought. So putting it all together, what do we have?
Well, you've got the enthusiastic global collaborator, master of obscure subcultures, music expert on one side, and on the other, the self-described terrible husband who, maybe, according to Moss, excels at impersonating normalcy.
And the actual work, the comedy, the music, the acting, it all involves putting on a specific lens, right? A persona, whether it's Garth making up a song or delving into punk history or speaking Spanish in Los Spookies, he's always being a character. Ferricito, the game host. Maybe that's where the stability lies, because just being Fred is harder.
And it loops back to his ancestry, doesn't it? That impulse to adapt, to learn new rules, to use performance to navigate. It feels like this deep generational echo in his family story.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really fascinating look into, one of the most complex, rhythmically driven minds in comedy today. Let's try and recap the key takeaways for you, the listener. The sheer depth of his career, it's really only matched by the depth of that surprising family history. And his core identity seems firmly rooted in music. Punk rock, drumming, that's the bedrock, the technical foundation for all the comedy timing, the character work.
Right. So takeaway one, he's a true comedy polymath. But his best, most defining work comes from these intense, functional, creative partnerships, especially with Brownstein, Myers, Hader. That professional intimacy seems key to his post-SNL success.
Second takeaway, that ethnic background is just incredibly complex. Venezuelan mom and a paternal grandfather who was Korean aristocracy, a dancer, forced to hide his identity as Japanese after that historical trauma in 1923. It's not just background info, it's a story about forced identity shifts that resonates through his life and work.
And third, his comedy is fundamentally musical. It's rooted in that rhythmic complexity, the precision he learned as a drummer. You see it everywhere, from the chaos of Nicholas Fenn, the spontaneity of Garth and Kat, to those really personal projects like Stand Up for Drummers and the 100 Sound Effects album concept. It's all about timing and sound.
Which brings us to that final provocative thought for you to chew on. We talked about his grandfather, Park Young-in, having to adopt a new name, Masami Kuni, basically to survive after that trauma. So, if Fred Armisen's greatest strength is impersonating everyone, even maybe a normal person, is it possible that this constant shifting, this embodying of external identities, is that maybe unconsciously a form of artistic survival for him? Does it echo his family's own history of needing to adapt, reinvent, perform, just to navigate the world?
It definitely makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the performance itself a kind of necessary adaptation?